Let's see if this camera's gonna be a little bitch. All right. Third time's a charm.
Third time's a charm.
Welcome back to We Love the State. This is the government's favorite podcast, which I forgot to say the first two times we did this. It's good to have you. I'm your host, Andy Coons. How you doing? I've got my badass co-host right next to me, Ben DeJong. How you doing, Ben?
Doing good. We've been experiencing a little technical difficulties. It was kind of funny. I think we talked about it earlier when I was on my way in. Somebody on one of the podcasts I was listening to were talking about Mercury was in retrograde and like everything's going to go wrong. And I kind of scoffed it off, and here we are.
The rubber has met the fucking road.
Yeah,
in the garage tonight.
We're running. Yeah, our tires are almost down to the bare bones. So,
yeah. So this is me and Ben's third attempt to start this podcast. Anyway, so yeah, we've had some crazy news today. Don Lemon was canned. He was shit canned, actually.
Yeah.
From CNN, as well as Tucker Carlson. Although I'm a little iffy on if he was shit canned or if he left, because I've heard both.
Yeah, from my perspective, I mean, Don Lemon took to Twitter, and so he's actually said something about it, and he basically said he was shocked because it was his agent who contacted him. So CNN didn't even have the balls to say...
Well, hold on. Did you see what CNN tweeted?
No.
They said, we reached out to Don Lemon to have him come in and sit down and talk with us, and he instead decided to tweet out his resignation.
Oh.
Yeah. It was from the CNN Communications Twitter account. Yeah.
Very strange.
Very so I'm Don Lemon of him.
Yeah. You know? Lemon.
Lemon. Excuse me.
I have a feeling we'll probably hear a lot more scuttlebutt in the days to come.
Watch your language, please.
Scuttlebuttoon. But at least with Tucker, I mean, Friday he signed off and said have a great weekend and we'll see you again on Monday. And I also heard that there was a lot of they were actually prepping for the show when they heard the news that he was no longer with Fox.
Right.
So to me, that unless he was kind of being told, hey, you have to say this, or because Tucker's not going to bend the knee.
Right.
And so maybe he said, well, fuck you, I'm out.
Yeah.
I suppose that's possible. But that's just, with somebody who's the top rated show in all of legacy media, like he was a cash cow for Fox.
Yeah.
And, they're never going to be able to replace him.
No.
They'll be able to replace him, but
it's not going to be the same.
Not going to be the same.
Like, because the people who were watching him, like, they know something's up. Like, they know there's something really fucking weird about this. So you think they're going to be like, well, you used to have Tucker Carlson, now you have Joe Jim Bob.
Or
right
Sean
here.
Hannity 2.0.
Or some other Sean Hannity motherfucker.
Right.
You think those people are going to transfer over? Absolutely not. Like, just today on Twitter, I've seen no less than a dozen people say, like, well, I'm giving up cable. Because he was the only thing they were watching on cable.
Right. And I think that's, especially for Fox, a lot of people were watching Fox because of Tucker. They weren't watching Tucker because of Fox.
Yeah.
So, you really, especially, and I'm assuming Tucker's going to go off and start something else. I know I listened a little bit on The Blaze, and Glenn Beck was like, you're more than welcome to come over to The Blaze.
Right.
And I mean, that would be huge. Like Tucker Carlson and like the Blaze crew. I mean, that could launch, because I mean, no matter where he lands, it's going to be a big impact.
Yeah. Well, he needs to do like a Steven Crowder type thing, like,
well, I'm sure like Rumble could, I mean, they just signed Russell Brand as an exclusive content creator.
And Crowder.
And oh yeah, they did with Crowder, didn't they? Yeah.
Although I don't think we're going to see much Crowder moving forward.
You think?
Yeah, he's burned a lot of bridges.
I was just listening to Michael Malice
with Dave Landau.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And that's the first kind of stuff that, like the dark side, that I don't think I'd ever really heard before. So that was very eye-opening because like some of the stuff like I Own You.
Yeah.
Like, holy shit. I mean, you could tell that Crowder has some anger management issues.
Or some ego issues.
And very much on the egotistical side.
An ego fueled by anger. That's scary.
Yeah, you never know what's going to come out of his mouth.
Yeah.
So, I mean, that could very easily become very self-destructive.
It could.
And burning bridges like that. But like Tucker, I mean, some of the stuff that I was listening to were like, well, is there a presidential run?
For Tucker Carlson? Mm-hmm. Man.
Can you imagine, like, you think things were bad when the establishment went after Trump? I mean, Tucker is way more principled than Trump and way more knowledgeable on the inner workings of D.C. because he grew up there. That would be, I mean, he had the...
Imagine a Trump Carlson
ticket.
Yeah.
Yeah, but neither of them would be a vice president.
You don't think Tucker would? Not for Trump?
I don't think so. I don't think he could play second fiddle.
I mean, if that was the ticket, though, unstoppable.
Yeah, but the moment Tucker crosses Trump and Trump's like, you're not loyal to me anymore, like, I could see them disagreeing, especially on foreign policy.
Yeah.
And that would fracture the whole ticket. So, I mean, Tucker's just too opinionated, and I think as a vice president, you really have to fall in line. And Tucker's not somebody who falls in line.
Yeah.
So, I mean, it's just.
So, do you think he would be running against Trump?
Yeah, I mean, if he went for 2024, I mean, that would be. I don't know. I don't know how connected he is to the Republican Party. Because I'm sure they wouldn't want him running because he's not. He calls them out constantly. Was it Chuck Schumer? Who was the one that was calling for him to be kicked off the air because of the January 6th footage that he put together? It was
everybody and their mother.
But it was like all the Republicans were too.
Yeah.
And I mean, that would just be wow. And again, who knows what? I mean, I think there's somebody else filed a rape accusation against Trump now.
Oh, another one?
Yeah. Oh. I mean, it's way old. I think it was like 20 years ago. This person, a reporter or something, claimed that he raped her. You wonder if he's even going to be able to run, if there's enough. I think they're just throwing everything possible at him to see what could stick.
Of all the people to get raped by.
Oh, yeah. An orange Michelin man. Yeah.
It's the biggest dick you've ever seen.
You're going to love it.
I can't do a Trump impression at all.
Yeah.
I've talked to a lot of people. A lot of people say my penis is perfect. Perfect, they say.
I may have leaked something onto Pornhub. I may have.
Stormy Daniels wasn't complaining.
Yeah, that's he could bury himself. I mean, he's just that egotistical. DeSantis still hasn't. Somebody said that there was a law in California that you couldn't be running for an office and hold an office. So they were saying that law, they were going to try to change that so DeSantis could keep governorship and run for president. But that could be what's holding him back.
Yeah, it could be. But it's like, how effectively are you going to govern and run a campaign at the same time?
Yeah. If anything, that shows that being a governor is pretty pointless if you can just not do it for a year and a half while you are, running around the United States campaigning.
Ooh, then maybe. I mean, that's kind of good for us to show how pointless governors are,
Yeah. I mean, it's going to be interesting. I mean, to me, like, Tucker was the thorn in the side of the establishment media, and now he's gone. So at this point, it's not media anymore. It's simply different arms of the propaganda of the federal government. I mean, that's just it.
Who do you think, if
Strictly.
it comes down to between Tucker Carlson and Trump, who do you think wins that?
I think Tucker Carlson, and the biggest is the Tucker Carlson Tonight was the most watched news program by Democrats. They were even watching him more than anything from CNN or MSNBC.
You know what?
Especially, I mean, his anti-war stuff. I mean, there are some Democrats still out there, I have to believe, that are
They're
free
truly
speech,
anti-war.
anti-war.
Like that classical liberal.
Yeah, I mean, that was always the Democratic Party. That was the check against the Republicans, the neocons.
I remember back when I was a lefty, like, starting to hear people talk against freedom of speech and just being like, this is weird. Because, like, I was like, don't you understand that, like, they're thinking that the freedom of speech, if we get rid of the freedom of speech, then nobody will say naughty words anymore. And I'm like, that
It's
the
like,
freedom of speech,
if we get rid of all the guns, then it stops violence.
right? And well, they're like people will stop saying hurtful things if we get rid of the freedom of speech. And I'm like, you do understand that the freedom of speech that Nazis have to call people the N-word is the same freedom of speech that you have to call Trump a Nazi. Like you can't have one without the other. If you're gonna say you can't use this super hurtful word about one group, now you have to protect every single one of those words,
Right.
and that's going to include something like Nazi and white and male and straight and cis and all those too.
Why do you think that people don't get that? Like, it's just, I don't know if it's just the level of intellectual honesty that is just such a void in the United States these days, but like, it's so blatantly obvious.
It is because one side of these arguments, whether it's freedom of speech or like the Second Amendment or any of these things that are like basic natural rights that people are advocating for getting rid of, are emotional arguments,
Right.
And so like whenever I was dumbfounded whenever I heard emotional arguments coming from the left, because like my history with leftism is like it all started with atheism, and that was all very like factual, like we were talking reason and logic and blah 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 blah. These are logical fallacies. These, like, that's why I learned what a straw man argument was, what a no true Scotsman argument was, is from all these just hours and hours and hours and hours and hours of debate between like religious people and atheists. And so like that's where I first like really got interested in debates, and so then it leaked over to like political debate also. And but like the only arguments I hear against the Second Amendment are emotional arguments,
And they fall apart pretty quickly if you try to actually
the thing
debate it.
About people presenting emotional arguments is that they're being emotional. They're not being logical. They're not being rational. And so like the other day I was arguing with somebody on Twitter about the Second Amendment. They're like, yeah, we want to take guns away, blah, blah, blah. And I'm like, okay, let's play this out logically. Okay. How did prohibition end? It ended with everybody getting a drink. Okay. Because it doesn't work. Okay. So the way that you want to round up guns, let's look at a real life example of that being tried, and we'll see how well it's worked. The war on drugs. And the pushback that I got from that is like, well, it's totally different. No, the fuck it isn't.
It's outlawing something.
It's outlawing something. And guess what? I can walk right out my front door and buy black tar heroin. They're like, no, you can't.
So that was that kid trying to sell something in the yard.
No, he wasn't trying to.
Oh.
He sold it.
Okay.
Yeah. I'm broke.
He had that like trench coat. I was like,
yeah.
Is he selling watches? But no, it's good to know it's black tar heroin.
So, but anyway, I was like, I can walk out of my front door right now and buy black tar heroin. And their counter argument was, no, you can't. Okay, well, like, first, what? What kind of an argument is that? No, that was
like, what are you, 3?
Yeah. It's just like, yeah, first of all, the town I live in, yes, I fucking can.
You could have been, you should have followed that up with, and my dad can beat up your dad.
My dad probably could beat up his dad. You know why? Because his dad isn't around.
Yeah, there
Maybe.
you go. That's why he's selling black tar heroin.
So, anyway,
it's sad to see somebody like Tucker go, because he was the only pushback against the propaganda machine that is corporate media.
well, let's look at accelerationism. Is it a bad thing in terms like that?
It's true. I think it was probably inevitable. We've seen, what the U.S. government's done with social media, and they've had, almost 100 years to infiltrate, old school media or legacy media to the same degree. I mean, if they had, how many ex-FBI and CIA employees were working at Twitter? You have to assume there's that many working at the, New York Post or the New York Times and the Washington Post and CNN. And, if they're already that much of control of the narrative at Twitter, CNN has to be basically I'm sure that they leak certain things to CNN,
Right.
but I'm sure that they also have people in CNN that are, flipping switches and dictating what gets pushed forward and message. And
I just thought of something. Tucker had that source from, was it the FBI or the CIA, who was talking about, it's like,
Kennedy.
it's my belief that the CIA was responsible for Kennedy's assassination, or they played a part in his assassination. That was just a couple months ago, So then what if somebody at the CIA talked to whoever the fuck the CEO of Fox News is and is like, hey, get rid of him,
the government, for multiple reasons, hated him.
Yeah.
So, and both sides, the deep state, the left, the right, all of it. So I'm sure that Fox has probably been pressured to get rid of him for a long time now. But again, he was making them money, hand over fist. So the benefit outweighed the risk of,
So what's more important than money?
the fact that the U.S. government takes Fox off the air.
Yeah. So they
Let him go, or
maybe
you're all
they
gone.
have some sort of like sedition clause against him, or some sedition thing that they can hold over Fox's head and say like he was propping up the January 6th rioters or insurgents and or insurrection. They could have gone after Fox in a legal sense and like, if you get rid of him, then we won't shut you down.
Yeah, there could have been it's either X or Y. And finally, Y became more damning than sticking with, Tucker.
So it's like, do we want to lose all the Tucker money or lose all the money altogether?
Well, and you kind of also have to wonder, and that's where, you have to look at somebody like Tucker, who's a truth teller, at least his version. I don't agree with him, like the whole immigration. He comes at the immigration thing wrong, in my opinion. Like, oh, it's the drugs that are coming. Where he gets immigration right is it's clearly being directed to bolster Democratic votes in certain areas. And that's where it's bullshit. But, don't get into this like every Mexican who's crossing illegally is going to kill somebody or is bringing in fentanyl or
Yeah.
He goes too heavy-handed on that. But
on some weird topics too. Because there are certain things with Tucker Carlson where it's like, how can you be so good on this one topic? Because it shows that like you're really thinking about this and you're like you're spot on. Especially with war. He's really, really good on war.
Yep.
How is somebody that good on war and so bad in other areas?
yeah, and you can pick apart like Jimmy Dore,
Yeah.
he's so good on everything, but he wants Medicare for all, and it's just the intellectual, gymnastics you have to go through to be like, the government's corrupt and everything's corrupt, but I want the government in charge of everyone's health. Like, whoa, like you're railing against how inept and corrupt the whole system is, but then you're like, but they're the only one who can do it. It's like, no, that's a small-minded approach to a big problem.
Yeah.
So, yeah, I mean, for all of Tucker's faults, he was the only voice that was pushing back. So, I think at this point we can consider legacy media propaganda media. I mean, I think we need to turn the table on even calling it corporate media or legacy media. Mm-hmm. It is purely propaganda at this point.
Yeah, for sure.
And there's no voices to push back. So it's 100%. It's a mouthpiece for the federal government.
Yeah.
So, and who knows? I mean, I think alternative media is going to come next.
Yeah.
Because legacy media is dying. I'm sure they're crying out for the government to regulate podcasts and alternative media like The Blaze, and
because that's huge.
Because they're stealing all their market share, and they're going to be labeled as fake news, and that's where that whole ministry of propaganda is going to be. Like, we're going to shut you down because of you said X and Y, and that's and either we're going to shut you down or we're going to throw you in prison for sedition or some made up, trumped up charge.
Yeah.
And that's where, if we do go to war, I could totally see. I mean, Lincoln did it first. I think he shut down and threw like reporters in prison that disagreed with him.
Right.
I think that happened. I mean, they were rounding up Asians during World War II and throwing them in internment camps. War has always been an excuse to dismantle free speech.
Yeah.
And I could see that being used as another reason for, pushing China or pushing Russia to a global world war.
Yeah.
Because it allows the federal government immense power.
Yeah.
And that's what, can you imagine? I mean, they're already talking, I just heard AM radio is now being taken out of all cars moving forward.
Really? Really?
Yep.
Wow.
So, if all of a sudden, they're, killing any potential alternatives, the internet is then the lone space for freedom.
And it's only a matter of time
before that gets locked down too.
Yeah. Because if they can, and of course this is all based on an assumption. We have no idea what happened to Tucker. But if they can get to Fox News and get them to fire their top guy, then they can get around Elon Musk and Twitter. Mm-hmm. They've already got Zuckerberg in their pocket. So it's like, what are people using the internet for? They use it for Twitter and fucking Facebook and YouTube.
Yeah.
They've already got YouTube in their pocket.
Well, and I've already heard that, so the Patriot Act, the language basically said foreign terrorists. They were going to amend it to say foreign and domestic. Uh-huh. Once they do that kind of gets them a get out of jail free card or a level up to basically do whatever they want inside our borders to fight terrorism. And terrorism has already been identified as anybody who has a "Don't Tread on Me" flag on their car or in their house, or anybody
or revolutionary imagery.
Right.
The year 1776. Like, these are things that they've been like, these are common terrorist things. Like, this is wild.
Yeah.
And like the more I think about it, the more I'm just like, we're I feel like we're getting really close to some wild shit going down, like
that's a trajectory. Like, you just have to see the progression to date. You can
see the trends.
You can just follow that to its conclusion.
Yeah. And what's the conclusion? How long are people going to put up with weird shit like this? They're not going to put up with it for forever. Like, I know, like, I know that there's like a meme about Americans where it's like the boiling frog thing, but it's like, first of all, we're not frogs. I feel like it's really stupid to say that.
I'm not a frog.
The reality is that human beings do have a limit, especially in the United States. We are not going to wind up like China, because there are some fucking people out there who are waiting to just have that right button pushed before they're like, okay, fuck these people. And they go postal.
And that's where I think the House of Cards starts to collapse. And we have a lot more discussions about national divorce. Mm-hmm. Because
can you believe how much it's in the public lexicon right now? That's crazy. I would not have imagined that, like if you talked to me about like a year ago and said like everybody would be talking about national divorce in a year from now, I'd be like, you're fucking high, you know?
Well, and if Trump were to get reelected, and honestly, I think a lot of the new voting laws that, you know, the mail-in ballots and basically legalizing ballot harvesting, like, I just don't see Republicans winning in that kind of, I mean, outside of, you know, their strongholds, like, you know, your Texas and your South Dakota, and like those are, I think, will remain Republican strongholds. But any states that were purple, or like Michigan, where we were kind of back and forth, I just don't see a Republican getting into the governorship.
No,
so
not at all.
So it's going to get. I mean, they're talking. They just sent more people, more military equipment, and to Taiwan. Mm-hmm. I mean, that's just. Can you imagine if China was doing that to Mexico and sending in a whole bunch of, you know, missiles and defense platforms that can clearly be used for offense anytime they want, and they were putting that on our border? Mm-hmm. You think we would stand for of course we won't.
No.
But that's where that whole ignorance of like, well, I'm an American and I make the rules.
American exceptionalism.
It's like, you're fucking high. I mean, not you. I mean, you might be, but
I am.
Yeah, it's a messed up world, and that's where I think it's important for, you know, shows like us and the libertarian movement as a whole to try to, I mean, push back with the knowledge we're probably not going to win.
Yeah.
But if we can change some hearts and minds, and if we can come up with alternatives, like medium of exchange, like gold backs or something like that, where if we move, or it's not but when we move to a digital dollar, we have a different system that we can use outside of that, you know, the establishment. And the same thing with, you know, freedom of speech. Like, maybe we go back to old school and it's ham radios FM receivers, and we start a pirate radio station.
Yeah.
That's mobile, you know, where
the back of a van.
Yeah, like back in the 60s when they were doing that kind of shit, or like putting something offshore. I don't know if we could put something in the middle of Lake Michigan, if that would be.
I think if it was something, I mean, if they're really cracking down on how we communicate to each other, I don't think they would give a fuck if you put it offshore. They're like, we're just going to round that up.
Yeah, you would have to be mobile to try to prevent getting locked down.
Dude. All right. So anybody listening to this, if you have a Twitter account, go ahead and clip this and tweet it out. If you are a libertarian, if you have a podcast or a YouTube channel, if you have anything like that, any sort of media related thing, like they're gonna come after us eventually. They are. You know, they're going to label us terrorists and insurrectionists and you know, like we're trying to cause violence, which is fucking ridiculous, but they're gonna come after us. And so here, like, whenever they do, that's the time to say, you guys can fuck off. You know, like, that's the time to really plant your fucking foot on the ground, be like, fuck off. Like, this is a line. This is a hard line in the sand. Don't let us not talk to each other, you know?
Yeah, and start coming up with alternatives, knowing that that's probably going to be an outcome. I mean, you know, I think, again, you know, going back to the discussion about national divorce, there will most likely be some states that collectively draw that line and then they're out, like a Texas. And if you're lucky enough to live there, I think you're going to be okay. But for the vast majority of us who are going to be stuck in authoritarian mini dictators, like what happened during COVID. I mean, if you take that kind of blueprint, that COVID, and you turn that against free speech, it's almost like, they've already wrote the playbook.
Yeah.
You can just aim it at anything the government doesn't like now.
Yeah.
And use, that's where, again, talking about, oh, it's a free country. It's like, if you have to get the government's permission, AKA a license, then it's not free, because the moment they take that away and you continue to do X, you go to jail.
Yeah.
Whether that's fishing, hunting, cutting hair, like, we don't live in a free society.
Yeah.
That's totally fascism. That was Nazi Germany and fascist Italy. Like, they wrote the book on government control, even with the guise of self-ownership.
Yeah.
And we're there, and people just, Bernie's on a book tour right now about it's okay to not like capitalism or something like that. I'm like, dude, do you even know what capitalism is? It's two people freely exchanging goods or services without any coercion.
Yeah.
That's capital. What was the last time you saw that happen at a large scale?
Right.
Outside of like Facebook Marketplace? Like, it doesn't exist in the United States.
Yeah. Well, I was watching a video today, and it was a guy who was this left-wing bread tuber guy who was like talking about Michael Malice. And I'll have to send you this video because it's wild. He goes, Michael Malice calls himself an anarchist, but he's actually an anarcho-capitalist, which is not an anarchist, because you can't have capitalism without a state. And I was like, what? What?
I do not think it means what you think it means.
Because capitalism is, in the way he describes capitalism, and I'm going to butcher the way that he said it, because I was just so dumbfounded that I heard such stupid shit coming out of somebody who thinks that they're intelligent. Like, he was like, capitalism is this fucking hierarchy with these rich people shitting on poor people, and you don't get to blah, 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 and these corporations own everything, and blah, blah.
So he's
like,
describing
what?
fascism. Like, dude, you have your isms confused.
Yeah, well, I heard that, and I'm like, how come nobody is going like, hey, can I have that jacket? I'll give you $30. If you're like, okay.
That's capitalism.
That's capitalism. That is capitalism. It's voluntary free exchange between two parties.
Yep.
Voluntary. They make capitalism sound like it's this fucking, like it's 1984.
Right.
And it's like, no, like none of you actually know what it is. Here's why. This is what I've realized about Marxism and Marxists in general, especially Karl Marx. All right, he was a lazy, fat piece of shit who didn't want to work, who was also very bad with money. He constantly was borrowing money from people in his life. He ruined his wife's family business. He drove it into the ground. And then the person who actually wrote the Communist Manifesto, or who developed the ideology, I don't remember his fucking name, but he died penniless. Or like, he was like on his deathbed, and Karl Marx went to visit him and asked him for money. Yeah. Like, Karl Marx is a piece of shit human being
who just blamed the man for all of his problems. Probably.
Who blamed people who were smarter and more responsible than him for all of his problems, and these are the bourgeoisie, and these are the fucking what's the other one? Why can't I think of it?
It's on the tip of my tongue too.
Proletariat.
Yeah.
He's like, there's a bourgeoisie, there's a proletariat, and he's like, the proletariat are always getting shit on by the bourgeoisie, and like, when you look at who wrote the Communist Manifesto, and the kind of person that he was, and the kind of people who always go towards Marxism, they're not top performers. They are low IQ, low energy, lazy, fat, I know I'm fat, victim people who want to blame everybody else for their fucking problems. And it's like the idea of like Americans and like trash, like we have landfills all over the place, like there's plastic all over the ocean and stuff. Like, if we don't see it, we don't worry about it.
It doesn't exist. Out of sight, out of mind.
Same thing with Marxism, because they want their shit paid for. They don't want to have to work for the things that they have. They want somebody else who they can't see to do all the horrible hard labor that they don't want to do.
Well, it's like people, again, pushing the electric vehicles. Like, they don't see the kids being forced into mines in Africa, mining lithium, or the coal power plants that put these cars together, but they feel good because they're driving an electric car. It's the hypocrisy is just, it's like, how do you, I just, And that's what I think makes me the most pessimistic about the United States is we have our society is so rotten to the core because of entitlements, because of like, healthcare is a right. No, it's not.
Yeah.
You can't force somebody to provide you a service and then call it a right. That means you're for slavery because you're okay with telling a doctor or a nurse, you have to treat me because it's my right. No, they
think they have a right to healthcare. They think they
right
have a
to
right
education.
to education. And this is something like I have a friend who's a lefty, and we were over at their house one night for a bonfire, and me and one of his kids were talking, and his daughter, I think she just graduated high school. She's super, super smart kid, and I'm not saying that I convinced her one way or another, but we got to talking about politics, and she asked me like where I was, and I was like, well, I'm an anarchist, and so I started talking about, anarchy, anarcho-capitalism, and he would butt in every once in a while and be like, well, I mean, don't you think everybody has the right to get an education? I was like, no, absolutely not. I was like, you have the right to seek an education. You have a right to educate yourself. But you don't have a right to force somebody
to teach you something.
And he goes, well, why is that? I'm like, because they don't have to. I was like, why should I hold a gun to a professor's head and be like, teach this guy mathematics?
That's not right, and
exactly.
He probably would never agree to that's right.
I was like, if anybody ever, like, if you went to buy a math book, and you got this math book, and someone's like, you're not allowed to read that book, fuck that guy, like, punch him in the face.
Yeah, you have a right to read the book.
You have the right to read the book. You don't have the right to have the book. You don't have the right to be given the book. You have the right to have the book if it's your property.
If you paid for it.
Calm the fuck down, libertarian.
Yeah, that is actually anarchy. I think anarchy historically has been given, and I think in some ways purposefully, like anarchy is looked at or thought of as chaos.
Yeah.
And anarchy is basically you take voluntarism to its extreme. Like anything and everything should be voluntary. Yeah. And that's anarchy. And so to think, there are some people, well, how do you have a government? Well, you could have a government as long as everybody can opt in or opt out whenever they want. So there are forms of, quote unquote governance or government that could be done in an anarchist society. As again, it just requires voluntary.
Yeah.
And that's it. I don't think people understand that. Even back to your point earlier about, the person who's ranting and raving against capitalism and describing fascism.
Yeah.
It's like, you don't understand. Like, we left capitalism a long time ago. Yeah. They talk about, saving capitalism and democracy in DC all the time, but we don't have capitalism. We barely have democracy.
Yeah.
And like, people just, they don't understand history, I guess, or they don't care to. They just are so, narrow-minded, short-sighted, whatever you want to.
Well, the left is also completely signed off on changing the definition of words.
Yeah.
Like, racism does not mean what racism has meant for fucking ever. Now it has everything to do with, like, power structures and, like, just because you don't hate black people doesn't mean you're not a racist. Like, what kind of dumb shit is that? Like, what's going on here?
Well, like,
just crazy.
Antifa, like anti-fascist, but yet all of their thing is Nazism. Like, clearly you don't understand what fascism is. It is a corporate and political power in bed together. that's not racist. Like, Mussolini, he never instituted any racist, like with fascism. That's Nazism. Nazism was racist. And like, again, like they should be called anti-Nazis, not anti-fascists, but they don't have a clue.
But even then, like when they use the term Nazi, it does not mean somebody who believes in the ideology of
It's
the
been
Third Reich.
dumbed down.
Not even that. It's totally different. If you are against them at all, you're a Nazi.
Right.
If you're pro-life, you're a Nazi. If
But I think
to some of them, they think biracial relationships are racist. It's insane.
or graduation ceremonies that are, not divided. Like
Yeah.
there's a lot of colleges that are like black only graduation ceremonies.
Yes, and it's like, what the fuck is this?
Like, how did we, like, Martin Luther King would be just like, I don't know how he would react to this kind of stuff, but like, he fought so hard for equality, and now we're back to segregation.
Yeah.
And that's supposed to be equity?
It all started with fucking Occupy Wall Street. That's when they started doing that shit. It was when I'm just gonna turn this way. It was when the Black Bloc people came in and just started dividing everybody up. This is the space for black people. You can go over to the space of the white people. You have to go over to the space of the Asian people.
It's a space thing, isn't it? Because then there was safe spaces in colleges.
All stemmed from Occupy Wall Street.
Words are violence.
Yes. Okay. I was just thinking about this earlier today about the whole words are violence thing. And I was like, how can you more fuck up a specific group of people than by convincing them that words are something that they should be afraid of and hurt their feelings? Like, if you can convince a group of people, especially along racial lines, that words can be so bad that it, like, some of these fucking idiots are like, whenever you say a naughty word like that, it causes like physical pain. No, it doesn't.
Or like, please, no clapping, because, clapping is, triggering. There's just like so many of these, especially at colleges. It's like, that's where...
What kind of society do you think you're building?
But like, what happened to being the rebel? To be the rebel rouser, to listen to grunge music and like shave your head and tattoo, and like that used to be like you were pushing, hug your sister, like be a real just crazy person, and there's
punch your dad in the balls, make out with your mom.
Well, that's going a little too far. Mom, I know you're listening. No.
My mom is for sure listening.
Sorry, Andy's mom. It's kind of like what was that guy's the Uncle Roger? Do you ever watch him on YouTube? He always has like a dirty joke, and then he's like, "Sorry, children." So I think from now on we're just gonna be like, "Sorry, mom." Yeah, I don't, just the next generation is so pussified that it's just really scary. I think the upside of that is the enrollment in the armed forces is at, I think, historical lows.
That's good.
Because these
well, is that good?
Narcissistic. I think it's good because.
Well, I mean, how much? What are the chances? Do you think that brings back the draft?
And that's true too. That could very well happen. There's precedent for it, and although I think there would be such outrage, because even the left would be like, you send your kid to die, I'm not going to send mine, because they're the self-righteousness.
I don't know, man. If it's something like Ukraine, leftists will send their kids.
You think so?
Yes.
To die in Ukraine.
Yes.
That would be an interesting,
because in their minds, and the way that it would be sold to them, like the way it would be sold to them is like, you're doing the right thing. Like if your kid's trying to draft or dodge the draft, like think of all those people in Ukraine, and these leftists can't be like, I don't care.
But what happens when the bodies start coming back?
Well, I mean, that's
probably
gonna be
would
a
be
different story
buried.
because it's the same thing with like Vietnam.
It would be buried. Ha ha. I mean, that's a really
Oh.
bad joke, but I was thinking more like the news would never cover it. You know, you're not going to see coffins coming off of airplanes
Not
on the
on
news.
TV. No.
No, it'll be all gung ho, go America.
But well, I don't know. You're not going to see it on TV, but hardly anybody's watching TV anymore. They're watching YouTube.
True.
You know, you're going to see that shit on Twitter, on YouTube, on Facebook. Oh my God, my son went off to Ukraine, got his arm blown off. And for what? You know, like, I think we'll see a lot of Cindy Sheehan type stories, you know, and I think they'll try to bury that stuff. But with Elon Musk owning Twitter, I think there are avenues to give stories like that a megaphone for now.
I was going to say, like, do you think the government would get to that point where they would shut down companies like Twitter? I think in wartime, I think they probably could, because they would find enough examples of Russian propaganda, aka peace lovers.
Do you think they'd be able to do that without Congress declaring war?
I mean, the last time Congress declared war was World War II. Mm-hmm. Like, and how many? I mean, I didn't even realize Vietnam was never a declared war. Mm-hmm. Like the Korean War, never declared.
Yeah.
These were all just acts of a president. Like that to me is like, wow.
They just figured out a way around it.
That's crazy.
We'll never see Congress declare.
I don't think they'll ever declare war again.
No, because I mean, I wonder what kind of stipulations.
Although wait, maybe desert was Iraq. Did Congress declare that war?
Operation Desert Storm?
Not the first one, but the second one after 9/11.
Oh, like Operation Iraqi
Freedom. Yeah.
I don't think so. I don't think Congress declared war after 9/11.
Yeah, I could almost swear that I remember hearing or reading somewhere where it wasn't. I mean, World War II was the last time they officially declared war. Mm-hmm. So we might have to fact check that.
Yeah, we could be wrong. We're probably not, though.
But probably not. Yeah. It's always a safe bet to say that the government is corrupt and take that to the furthest. You never underestimate the corruption of the U.S. federal government.
Yeah, I mean, going back to the draft, like the left right now is in the same position that the right was right around 9/11. You know, like they are fully bought in. They're fully bought and paid for with like the federal government. You know, they don't like people who don't like government. They don't like people who like small government. They don't like people who talk bad about the government. Like if I go on Twitter, and I'm sure that lefties can't see me, you know, I only have 500 followers or 500 and some followers, but like if I go onto Twitter and I tweet out something bad about the government, like I would get mostly leftists who'd be like, no, you know, but that's how it is on TikTok. You know, if I say shit about the government, which is literally every TikTok I do,
some more overt than others, but
right.
Yes.
But like it's rarely ever right wingers that go like, well, actually, you know, this is why we need the government. It's always left wingers, you know?
Yeah.
But I mean, if you look at left-wing ideology versus right-wing ideology, the ideology is big government versus small government.
Well, and that's, I think, Republicans have been, not the politicians per se, but the average Republican, they've always been pro-freedom. I mean, they get a lot wrong, but I mean, granted, they do like to impose their morality on others. Mm-hmm. So, like, freedom light, you know, they're not pro-freedom, you know. I mean, like some of the stuff Michael Knowles has been saying recently about, like, what he wants to ban and, you know, go back to the 50s. And that was when things were perfect, when, you know, interracial marriage was outlawed and abortions were outlawed. And, like... Mm-hmm. To me, that's just the right's authoritarian viewpoint.
You know, I wonder if that's why just everything is so crazy right now, because you had the right wing authoritarianism of like the Bush era, you had the left wing authoritarianism of the Biden Obama era. both of those eras.
Yeah, and isn't that crazy that it was right? I mean, they went basically one right after the other.
Mm-hmm. If you're libertarian, you've heard the term uniparty a billion times. And I just
now mine is.
Hold on, let me just go tell her to calm down.
Because that always works.
I just got a text.
Let me know. I will run if you do that.
I just got a text that came through on my computer from my wife, all caps, and it said, "My anxiety is through the roof."
So that's when our eyes went like this.
Yeah. Anyway.
Yeah, speaking of anxiety, the world's gonna end tomorrow.
That's a typical We Love the State
episode.
Yeah. By the way, everything sucks and it's just getting worse.
It's just getting worse. Just remember, on the other side of like self-destruction, I think that's where we have a real chance for, introducing libertarian ideas.
Well, and a little bit of a light at the end of the tunnel.
Mad Max, that's what I'm hoping for.
Hell yeah. All that leather.
Oh, nipple piercing and leather. Yummy.
Get masks.
Sorry, Mom.
Tina Turner. All right. So a little bit of a light at the end of the tunnel. I recently listened to the audiobook of The White Pill by Michael Malice.
I've been meaning to.
It's great.
Is it?
Yes. It's really great. It's not what you think it's going to be.
So my perception was a lot was like an historical evaluation of the Soviet Union.
Yeah. But you have to hear all these horrible stories so that the white pill makes sense.
So basically saying, things have been a lot worse for other people. So as bad as we think we have it, we don't have a clue.
I don't want to give anything away because it is really good. You have to check it out.
Yeah, no, that's.
But like one light that I see at the end of the tunnel. Oh, I know why her anxiety is so high. It's because she's playing a scary video game.
Oh,
it's called Amnesia: Dark Descent, and it's the scariest fucking game I've ever played. And I hate scary games.
Like, is it on like an iPhone game or
no, it's on Xbox?
On Xbox,
yeah. I warned her. I got like 15 minutes into that
message
game
her back and say,
"Fuck this!
Told you so."
Anyway,
that's why the couch smells like bodily fluids.
We should probably wrap this episode up. I'm gonna walk into my bedroom with like a YouTube video of cats playing, be like, "Here, I got your eye bleach."
Yeah.
Anyway, the light at the end of the tunnel is that maybe, just maybe, if you look at how young America is, we have like a drug problem, okay? Or a drinking problem or any sort of substance problem. That substance is power, okay? And maybe the uniparty's addiction to this power is almost getting to the point where we're hitting rock bottom as a society. Because just like you said, our society is sick. It's very sick, And like our values are all fucked up. Our priorities are all fucked up. Nobody is looking for things or the way that they actually are. They're looking at everything the way that they want them to be, and they're believing that accordingly. And so if you look at it like an addict, it could be that our country is about to really hit that rock bottom where you wake up in the basement of a stranger with a condom shoved up your ass, no memory of the night before, the worst hangover of your life, and your dad just said he hated you or some shit like that. Like rock.
That was my week last week. What are you talking about?
So maybe the country's like Ben. And so the light there is that when people hit rock bottom, they either die or they change, And so it could be that all of this is going to culminate into sort of society looking at itself and being like, maybe we should stop being such a piece of shit country,
Like a great reset.
Yes. where like you'll own nothing but be happy. No, but like
it's a reset, but on a good note, not authoritarian.
Like maybe we really need to hit that wall so that maybe there is a chance that we can get a government that is not in bed with weapons companies. You know, this is very idealistic or this is very un-libertarian ANCAP of me to say this, but like that, like I'd much rather have an outcome like that than it just continually get worse and worse and worse and nothing ever changes, you know?
Right. And that's like where
if we really get it, like if we really turn into like a USSR type thing where they're causing Americans to starve and shit like that, you know?
Yeah. And that's where, you know, I've talked, you know, ad nauseum at length on, you know, financial collapse and financial calamity. And I think, you know, that is the catalyst, because that is, I think Peter Schiff really talks about the fact that we've been on financial heroin for the last 10 years with the government just printing money and printing money and printing money. And the moment the printers like slow down and like everybody has to start sobering up, and it's hard, and nobody wants to come to terms with the hangover. And so, you know, there's always that, you know, re-injection in the arm of more monetary stimulus,
right.
But eventually you're going to OD.
Yeah.
And you're going to either die or you're going to come to a realization that like you don't want to die. And so you have to change.
Yeah.
So, you know, that Mike, again, kind of going back to the, you know, the sickness of the United States, of the moral depravity and the narcissism that is just like, it's almost like a cancer that's just spread. This, you know, everything revolves around what I want and what hurts my feelings. It's me.
Yeah.
You know, when a reset or a collapse or something really happens, are those people going to face the music and be responsible, or are they going to just riot in the streets and just break windows and take everything because they feel like it's they deserve it?
Yeah.
Like it's just, you know, it's an unknown at this point. And I think it's probably going to be very different in different areas of the country because we are very fragmented. You know, but like was it last year or 2 years ago when the riots in Grand Rapids happened? And like, I would have never guessed that, you know, cop cars would be set on fire and like store windows would be broke. And, you know, and ironically enough, I remember seeing pallets of bricks being just delivered to the middle of the city. And it's like, you know, what the hell is going on?
Yeah.
And, you know, it's all, you know, it becomes
a little note on them that says from George.
Yeah. Mr. Soros. It's definitely comes home when you see it locally and when it's happening in your community.
Yeah.
It's not just on the news anymore. And I think that reality, when it starts setting in, I think it's going to really start checking a lot of people's privilege when they are hungry and the government, like the food stamps, are bouncing because nobody's accepting them or there's not the food on the shelf. Like all of a sudden, when your survival's on the line, your pronouns don't become that important.
Yeah.
And, you know, that's where it'll be interesting to see what happens.
I'll definitely lose some weight. Definitely.
Whether I want to or not.
All right. Well, man, it feels good to record. It's funny, if you listen to like the last 3 episodes that were posted, because they were those banked ones, well, every single one of them were like, man, it feels so good to record.
We are going to get back on our weekly cadence. So you're going to have a regular stream of negativity in your ears, like the good old days. But again, you know, the idea of preparing for the worst, hoping for the best. And I think that's, you know, I don't want to lose sight of that, because again, I think we do, or at least I know I come across a lot, you know, more on the glass half empty,
right.
Things are going to fall apart. I just, you just kind of have to look at the trajectory and you can see kind of where things are heading.
Yeah.
And again, I think with programs like ours, there's a lot of stuff that's happening. I think there's a lot of people that are waking up. I don't think it's too late. I think it may be too late for the United States, but I don't think it's too late for us as individuals living in the United States.
It's too late for America. It's not too late for Americans.
Yes, that's a great. We need to throw that on a T-shirt somehow. Yeah. But yes, great to be back, and you'll be hearing a lot more from us moving forward.
Yep. So, different format coming soon. You'll see a lot more clips coming out. Probably not from this episode, but there's a lot of very good changes, I think, coming down the pike. A lot of really cool stuff.
Yeah, we're super excited, professionally, personally, and we're excited that you all are going to be along for the ride.
Yep. So if you want to follow me on TikTok, you can follow me at Andy Coons. That's Koons. If you want to follow me on Twitter, which is where I say all the stuff that'll get me banned off of TikTok, you can follow me at Andy_Coons. I'm at like 560 some followers. Let's get that shit up to 600. Yeah. That's all my plugs.
Yeah. You can find me on Instagram. Picture this 1979. Same handle for my Twitter. Starting to get a little bit more active on Twitter. But yeah, the clips will be coming a lot more, not just the memes. Granted, I can never say no to a good meme, so there's always going to be memes. But yeah, a lot more video clips. You're going to see our beautiful faces on a lot of shorts and Instagram stories, etc. So just to warn you, when you're just flipping through on your phone and all of a sudden you're like, holy crap, that guy's scary. That's us. And we apologize ahead of time.
Yeah. Yeah, Ben's the scary one. I'm the really attractive, approachable, charming looking one.
Yes, that's the yin and yang. I'm the doom gloomer and Andy's the everything will work out.
He's the Batman to my Superman.
Yes, I am.
All right, thanks for watching, listening, whatever it is.
Peace.